What if the breakthrough you've been waiting for is already within your reach, but you've been looking in the wrong place? Too often, people search for solutions in human strength, forgetting that true victory comes from a higher power. Psalm 20 isn't just a passage, it's a divine strategy for overcoming any struggle. It carries a hidden power that has sustained warriors, kings, and believers for generations. Think about it. How many times have you felt exhausted, trying everything possible to fix a situation, only to hit a dead end? That's because some battles aren't meant to be fought with human effort alone. The Bible reveals that God steps in when we call on Him, offering supernatural strength, guidance, and victory. Psalm 20 is proof that He hears, He acts, and He delivers. But here's where most people get it wrong. They pray without understanding the depth of what they're declaring. Psalm 20 isn't just a request for help. It's a declaration of trust, power, and divine intervention. When spoken with faith, it aligns you with the supernatural, shifting your focus from fear to confidence, from struggle to breakthrough. And the best part? This powerful psalm isn't just for biblical time-sits for today. It's for you. No matter what battle you're facing, financial struggles, health issues, emotional burdens, this prayer carries the strength to transform your situation. But to unlock its full power, you need to understand its deeper meaning. That's exactly what we're about to do. We'll break down Psalm 20, uncovering how it brings comfort in distress, strength in weakness, and victory in battle. Get ready, because what you're about to discover could change the way you pray forever. Life has a way of throwing storms our way when we least expect it. There are moments when everything feels like it's crumbling, finances running dry, relationships strained, or health taking an unexpected turn. But Psalm 20 stands as a powerful reminder that no hardship goes unnoticed by God. When distress knocks on the door, it's not the end of the road, it's the moment to turn to divine intervention. Those who pray in faith, trusting in the promises of the Bible, discover that no cry for help ever goes unanswered. Think about this. If a child gets lost in a crowd and cries out for their parent, will the parent ignore them? Of course not. That's exactly how God responds in our times of trouble. He is not distant or indifferent. He listens, sees, and acts. Psalm 20 isn't just poetic words. It's a declaration of faith, a testimony that no suffering is permanent when placed in His hands. Angels are commanded to guard those who trust, reinforcing that divine help is always near. Many have found themselves at a breaking point, unsure of what to do next. But here's the thing. Distress isn't the enemy. It's the invitation. An invitation to seek refuge, to call upon the one who has the power to turn any situation around. That's why prayer isn't just a ritual, it's the key that unlocks supernatural intervention. Psalm 20 proves that even when circumstances scream defeat, God's answer is always greater. Look at King David. He faced wars, betrayals, and near-death experiences, yet he wrote Psalm 20 with unshakable confidence. Why? Because he had lived through God's deliverance firsthand. He knew that when the battle raged, divine aid was on its way. It wasn't about blind optimism. It was about faith forged in fire, and if it was true for David, it's true for anyone who dares to trust today. Imagine the weight of your problems suddenly shifting, not because they disappeared, but because you're no longer carrying them alone. This is what happens when faith meets action. Psalm 20 isn't about ignoring difficulties. It's about confronting them with the certainty that God answers. The moment you start believing this, everything changes. The world offers countless solutions for stress, meditation, therapy, self-help books, but none compare to the power of divine intervention. There's something profoundly different about knowing that the Creator of the universe is actively fighting on your behalf. This isn't a feel-good belief. It's a reality that countless believers have experienced. Those who cling to Psalm 20 don't just survive hardships, they overcome them. So, if you're in the middle of a battle, don't just endure it, pray through it. Your struggles are not the end of your story. And just when you think you can't take another step, remember, help is already on the way. But how does God send this help? That's exactly what we'll explore next. Many people see God as a distant observer, watching from above, but not really stepping into their struggles. That couldn't be further from the truth. Psalm 20 reveals that God is not passive. He is a God of action. When His people cry out, He moves. He doesn't just listen, He intervenes. If you've ever felt like your prayers were hitting the ceiling, know this. Heaven is always at work, even when you can't see it. Think of a soldier on the battlefield. No good commander would leave their troops defenseless. Instead, they send reinforcements, strategy, and weapons to ensure victory. That's exactly what God does for those who trust in Him. When life's battles rage, He doesn't leave His people exposed. He dispatches help from heaven. Angels are sent, paths are cleared, and doors that seemed locked forever suddenly open. Some might say, "But I prayed, and nothing happened." Yet, just because you don't see movement doesn't mean it's not happening. Picture a seed planted underground. For weeks, there's no visible change. But beneath the surface, roots are growing, preparing for the breakthrough. God's help often works the same way. Just because you don't see immediate results doesn't mean He's not already moving on your behalf. The Bible is filled with moments where divine intervention changed everything. When Israel faced the Red Sea with an army behind them, God didn't just listen to their cries, He parted the waters. When Daniel was in the lion's den, God didn't just hear his prayers, He shut the mouths of the lions. God's pattern is clear. He listens, but He also acts. If He did it then, He will do it now. Imagine you're drowning in a raging sea. You cry for help, and a rescue team arrives with a lifeline. Would you ignore it just because you expected a different kind of rescue? Sometimes, God's help comes in unexpected ways. It could be through a person, an opportunity, or even a delay that protects you from unseen danger. The key is to recognize His intervention, even when it doesn't look the way you imagined. This is why prayer isn't just about speak-ins, about expecting. Those who pray with faith don't just hope for help, they anticipate it. They live with the certainty that God is not only listening, but orchestrating their breakthrough. Psalm 20 is a battle cry, a reminder that divine reinforcements are always on their way. So the next time you pray, don't just watch. Look for the signs, the open doors, the small shifts that signal something greater is unfolding. Because when God moves, everything changes. And what happens when we place our full trust in Him? That's exactly what we'll uncover next. Trust is easy when life is smooth. But what about when storms hit? Psalm 20 isn't just a poetic encouragement, it's a declaration that no matter the battle, God remains our ultimate strength and shield. When challenges rise like waves ready to drown us, He stands as an immovable anchor. Those who trust in Him don't walk in fear because they know their protection doesn't come from luck or human effort, it comes from the Most High. Think about a warrior going into battle. No soldier relies on their own strength alone. They depend on armor, weapons, and most importantly, their commander's strategy. Life works the same way. Facing struggles without God's covering is like stepping onto the battlefield. Without armor, it's not just risky, it's reckless. The Bible teaches that those who lean on God walk with divine protection, a shield that no enemy can penetrate. The problem is, trust isn't always easy. It's one thing to say, "I trust God," and another to actually surrender control when everything feels uncertain. But history proves that trust in God is never misplaced. Look at David surrounded by enemies, facing giants, betrayed by those closest to him. Yet, he declared that God was his fortress. Not once was he left defenseless. The same promise stands for those who pray and believe today. Ever noticed how little children trust without hesitation? If a loving parent says, "Jump, I'll catch you," they leap without question. That's the kind of trust God calls us to have. But here's the challenge: many are so used to disappointment that they hesitate to trust fully. They try to fight battles alone, wearing themselves down instead of leaning into the one who never fails. Imagine walking through fire and not being burned. That's what happens when faith replaces fear. It doesn't mean problems disappear, it means they no longer have the power to consume you. Trusting in God is like carrying an umbrella before the storm even arrives, knowing that when the rain falls, you'll be covered. Angels are dispatched to guard those who put their confidence in Him, reinforcing that His strength is more than enough. The enemy wants nothing more than to shake your faith, to make you doubt whether God is truly with you. But Psalm 20 reminds us, He is not just present, He is for you. When your trust is anchored in Him, you don't just survive battles, you overcome them. The question isn't whether God is your strength. The real question is, are you willing to lean on Him completely? Because when you do, something incredible happens. Fear loses its grip, worry fades, and suddenly you find yourself walking in a peace that doesn't make sense to the world. But how do we reach that level of trust? How do we train our hearts to fully surrender? That's exactly what we'll uncover next. Anxiety is a thief. It steals peace, drains energy, and blinds people to the truth that God is in control. But here's the good news. Psalm 20 isn't just a passage to read. It's a weapon to fight back. When life feels overwhelming and the weight of uncertainty presses down, prayer shifts the atmosphere. It's not about empty words. It's about actively surrendering every fear into the hands of the one who already holds the outcome. Picture a person carrying a heavy load up a steep hill, struggling with every step. That's what anxiety does. It turns life into an exhausting uphill battle. But imagine if that person stopped and handed their burden to someone stronger. Instantly, the weight would lift and the journey would become lighter. That's exactly what happens when we pray and reflect on Psalm 20. Instead of carrying worries alone, we place them in the hands of God. The Bible reminds us repeatedly to cast all our cares on Him. Why? Because we weren't designed to carry them. Worry does nothing but drain the soul, but trust restores. That's why Psalm 20 is so powerful. It's a reminder that when we surrender our battles through prayer, God steps in to fight for us. The moment we stop wrestling in our own strength, we make room for divine intervention. Anxiety often comes from the need to control. People fear the unknown, so they try to predict, plan, and manipulate outcomes. But what if, instead of trying to control everything, we embraced a different mindset? What if we replaced overthinking with overtrusting? This doesn't mean being passive. It means actively choosing faith over fear, shifting focus from the problem to the promise that God is working behind the scene. Think of a storm outside. Thunder roars, lightning strikes, and rain pours. Yet inside the house, there's warmth, safety, and peace. Prayer is that shelter. It doesn't stop life's storms, but it protects us from being destroyed by them. That's why reflecting on Psalm 20 daily isn't just a habit, it's a strategy. It trains the mind to trust, reprograms the heart to release fear, and strengthens the spirit to stand firm. The enemy thrives on anxiety because it weakens faith. But prayer cuts off that power. The more we meditate on Psalm 20, the more we step into unshakable confidence. Anxiety loses its grip when we remember that God isn't distant. He's present, active, and already aligning things for our good. And the best part? The deeper we go in trust, the more we unlock the blessings He has in store. Because God doesn't just remove anxiety, He replaces it with something greater. A peace so deep, so unexplainable, that it changes everything. But what happens when we not only surrender our fears, but also align our desires with God's will? That's where things get even more powerful. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Everyone has desires, dreams, goals, prayers whispered in quiet moments. But here's the key. When trust is fully placed in God, He doesn't just hear those desires. He fulfills them in ways greater than imagined. Psalm 20 reminds us that He grants the requests of those who rely on Him. Not because of luck, not because of effort alone, but because true trust aligns the heart with divine purpose. But let's be real, waiting on God's timing isn't always easy. When answers seem delayed, doubt creeps in, whispering, "What if it never happens?" That's where most people get stuck. They either give up too soon or try to force things in their own way. Yet, the Bible teaches that those who trust in God's plan are never left empty-handed. It's not about if He will move, it's about when. Think of a farmer planting seeds. He doesn't see instant results. He waters, waits, and trusts that growth is happening underground. The same is true for prayer. Just because something isn't visible yet doesn't mean nothing is happening. Angels are moving, doors are aligning, and in the right season, what was planted in faith will bear fruit. The key? Patience, persistence, and complete trust in God's process. Here's the mistake many make. They focus more on the what than the who. They chase the blessing instead of the one who gives it. But when God becomes the priority, something shifts. Desires are refined, perspectives change, and suddenly, what once felt impossible starts unfolding effortlessly. Because those who delight in God don't just receive what they want, they receive what's truly best. Look at biblical figures like Joseph. He had dreams of greatness, but faced betrayal, slavery, and prison before seeing fulfillment. If he had doubted God's plan, he could have given up. But he remained faithful, and in the right time, everything changed. His story proves a powerful truth. Delays aren't denials. They're divine setups for something far greater. Psalm 20 isn't just a comforting passage, it's a promise. A reminder that desires placed in God's hands don't fade. They flourish. But here's the challenge. Trusting means releasing control. It means being willing to let go of personal timelines and embrace divine ones. And when that shift happens, breakthroughs follow. So, what happens when we stop worrying about outcomes and start focusing on the one who holds them? That's when faith deepens, anxiety fades, and God's power moves in ways beyond expectation. But there's one more key: realizing that earthly resources are never the source of true success. And that's exactly what we'll uncover next. People are conditioned to rely on what they can see: money, connections, skills, and strategies. But Psalm 20 delivers a powerful wake-up call. These things, though useful, are not the true source of security. Real strength comes from something far greater: the power and name of God. When life shakes everything familiar, human resources fail, but divine power never does. History proves this truth. Look at battles fought in the Bible. Victory never came from having the largest army or the strongest weapons. It came from trust in God. David didn't defeat Goliath with superior strength. He conquered through faith. The walls of Jericho didn't fall because of brute force, but because of obedience to God's command. Time and again, human strategies fell short, but God's power prevailed. Even today, the same principle applies. People chase success through effort alone, thinking financial security or personal connections will keep them safe. But what happens when money runs out? When doors close? When everything planned crumbles? That's when it becomes clear true security isn't found in human effort. It's found in unwavering trust in God. Think of a ship in the ocean. No matter how strong, it's powerless against a raging storm without an anchor. Human resources are like that ship: useful, but vulnerable. The name of God, however, is the anchor that holds firm, no matter how fierce the waves. Those who trust in Him aren't shaken because their foundation is unbreakable. Some may argue, but we need resources to survive. And yes, God uses people, finances, and opportunities to bless. But here's the difference. Those who depend on these things alone will always live in fear of losing them. Those who trust in God, however, walk in confidence, knowing He is the ultimate provider and His resources never run dry. Psalm 20 makes it clear. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. This verse isn't just poetic, it's a battle strategy. When faced with impossible situations, those who stand firm in God's name see miracles unfold. Because His power isn't limited to human logic, it operates on supernatural principles. And that's exactly what leads to a bold, fearless life. When confidence is placed in God rather than temporary things, a shift happens: worry fades, faith strengthens, and the impossible becomes possible. But there's one more key: learning how to stand firm in that trust, no matter what comes. And that's where we're headed next. Life is full of battles, some expected, others that hit like a storm in the middle of a calm sea. But here's the truth: those who trust in God don't face these struggles alone. Psalm 20 reminds us that strength doesn't come from within, it comes from above. When faith is placed in Him, even the hardest trials become stepping stones rather than obstacles. Think of a warrior in battle. No matter how skilled, he doesn't rely on his own strength, depends on his armor, his training, and his commander's strategy. The same is true in spiritual battles. Trusting God is the armor that protects, the wisdom that guides, and the strength that sustains. Without it, fear takes over. With it, even giants fall. But let's be real: trusting God, when life is falling apart, isn't always easy. Doubt whispers, "What if He doesn't show up?" Anxiety says, "You need to fix this yourself." Yet the Bible is filled with stories of those who stood firm in faith and saw God's power move. Daniel in the lion's den, Moses at the Red Sea, Paul in prison. Every one of them faced the impossible, and every one of them saw victory not because of their own strength, but because of God's presence. Modern life isn't much different. Stress, uncertainty, and challenges can make anyone feel powerless. But here's the key: pray, surrender, and trust. Just like a child doesn't worry about tomorrow because they trust their parents' care, those who trust in God can walk in peace, knowing He is already working things out. The burden isn't theirs to carry alone, and this changes everything. Fear loses its grip. Anxiety fades, challenges become opportunities for faith to grow. Because trusting in God isn't just about believing He exists, it's about knowing He is actively involved, guiding, protecting, and sustaining. It's about experiencing His grace, even in the darkest moment. Psalm 20 isn't just a comforting passage, it's a battle cry. A reminder that no matter what comes, those who place their trust in God stand firm. They are strengthened by His presence, upheld by His grace, and carried by His promises. They don't just survive challenges, they overcome them. And this is why sharing this truth is so important. When faith is strengthened, hope spreads. When one person experiences God's power, it inspires others to do the same. That's why building a community of prayer and encouragement matters, because together, we remind each other that God never abandons those who trust in Him. And that's exactly what we'll uncover next. Now that you've uncovered the power of Psalm 20, the question is, will you just read it, or will you declare it over your life? The truth is, knowing about God's strength isn't enough. You have to trust in it, lean on it, and live by it. When you do, fear loses its grip, battles become stepping stones, and victories become testimonies. Think about the struggles you're facing right now. What if, instead of carrying them alone, you handed them over to God completely? What if, instead of relying on temporary solutions, you stood firm in faith, knowing that divine help is already on the way? The Bible makes it clear God is not distant, He is actively working in your life. So here's your challenge. Pray Psalm 20 with boldness. Declare it over your family, your dreams, your battles. Make it part of your daily spiritual routine. When faith becomes action, miracles happen. And when you experience this truth for yourself, don't keep it to yourself, share it. Someone you know might be in desperate need of this message right now. And before you go, let me ask you this. What's the biggest challenge you're trusting God with today? Leave a comment below and let's build a powerful community of faith together. And of course, if this message blessed you, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another life-changing teaching. God's power is real, His presence is near, and your breakthrough is closer than you think. Now, let's walk in faith and see His promises unfold.